Hello everybody and welcome to another Living Story recap. I'm doing it a bit quicker to patch day this time because it seems to me like Arenanet are going to put out like between each Living Story update, like when we're halfway through waiting for the next one, they tend to put out loads of extra information and then I have to kind of squeeze it all together. So this time I'm just going to do the recap straight away of what actually happens in game. It's interesting in that it's nothing like what I thought we were going to get, but that's not necessarily a good thing. But anyway, I'll give you guys my thoughts and a comprehensive summary on what we've seen with the Clockwork Chaos release. Basically, it picks up at the end of the Queen's Jubilee ceremony. Last patch we saw the opening ceremony, this time we're seeing the closing ceremony. And we'd seen on the official website that this was going to be called just the Queen's Speech. That's what we thought the update was going to be named. But in fact, it's called Clockwork Chaos. I guess they kind of swapped that a little bit later. You will have also noticed that on the main website, as I mentioned in the previous video, it didn't actually give us that information. It just said, oh, the Queen's going to give us a speech and the Queen herself has a surprise as well. I'm actually thinking that they wrote the Queen has a surprise on there actually was a bit of a misstep, because in game it turns out she didn't have a surprise at all, but maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit there. Essentially, you're going to load back in at the Queen Pavilion, you'll be looking over the giant hole in the ground, and the Queen stood some distance away. She's about to give her speech. You can speak to Rox and Brem, they're both there, Logan Thackeray's there, Anise is there, all these characters that were present previously, they're all still around and still in the picture. Rox basically mentions that even though she's a dignitary and she's supposed to be representing the Char, she warns you that she might fall asleep in the middle of the speech, which I quite liked as a line because it made me think of being an English person. You're supposed to listen to our Queen give a speech on Christmas Day, and it's always like super boring, and you've probably just had your Christmas dinner as well at the same time, so you're all bloated and lethargic and want to sleep in the middle of the afternoon, and the speech comes on. It reminded me of that. Anyway, so Rock says that, Brahim just says, oh, I want to get down and start fighting these clockwork creatures again. I don't like the break in the festivities, whatever. And then the Queen says this. This is her speech, okay? This is what the entire event until very recently seemed like it was going to be called, okay? Thank you all for coming, she says. This event is ending, but humanity's resolve will never waver. We have withstood every challenge thrown at us, because unity is our strength. Together, there is nothing we cannot withstand. That's it. That's the speech. That's the Queen's speech, because then she gets interrupted by Scarlet. So the mysterious stranger from before, 100% confirmed to be Scarlet. I don't think that's a bit of a surprise. I don't think that's really that exciting either. She looks really... I don't know whether I like them or not, but a lot of these new Living Story characters have got really distinct faces. I don't know what it is. They look a bit off a lot of the time too. But you can see Scarlet, she looks very distinct, definitely. There's a bit of a problem because during this speech, we actually get sort of a bit of a cutscene, right? And there's no lip sync. So first you have this quite bizarre looking Sylvari straight away speaking, and then there's no lip sync either, which can throw you out of it a bit. But anyway, Scarlet appears, she teleports into the middle of the whole arena. She's got a platform that she seems to have summoned for herself, more teleporting around, which the update does go into, so don't worry, they do explain a little bit of that. And she basically says, oh hey, yeah, I'm this crazy evil person, there's no real motivation for what I'm doing, I'm just insane and I'm unpredictable, and I'm gonna ruin your festivities and show everybody that humanity are not strong. And contrary to what your Queen says, yes, humanity will fail. And that's her idea, basically. She goes off on this little monologue, and then she tries to kidnap the Queen. So she grabs the Queen and tries to take her down the hole into the pavilion. The pavilion, which Scarlet has now twisted into her own, like, dimensional area, known as Scarlet's Playhouse. Now, I say dimensional area. Really, it doesn't look any different to the regular pavilion, except the fact the lighting is a little bit different. But anyway, she wants to drag the Queen down, but Lord Farron is there. Now, something very cool that Arenanet did was they changed this otherwise typical cutscene into a very cool stylized cinematic that we haven't really seen before. If you guys remember, before the game came out, I think it was a plan of Arenanet's to have lots of those very stylized cutscenes that we see like at character creation and when you complete the game and at the start of Ascalon Catacombs. They were going to have loads of those, like probably one for each dungeon, but I guess they ran out of time. And this is one of those few times we've actually seen Arenanet go back to going with like a stylized type cutscene thing. It's not completely made by concept art. It is different to what we saw at the launch of the game, but it is cool. I really liked that cutscene that they did. And again, there's like no lip sync here, but it kind of makes sense because they're mostly still images just with a bit of moving background to make it look like there's more motion. Anyway, it's a cool looking cutscene, and Lord Farron during this cutscene says, no, I will save you, the Queen. And he's a bit of a joke character, but he is doing something quite heroic here, so I at least appreciate that they haven't just made him a caricature rather than a character, if that makes sense. Anyway, he tries to save the queen as she's falling down the pit, thus putting himself in danger and himself ready to fall in the pit. And as he grabs the queen, it vanishes and it shatters like an illusion, like a mesmer illusion. So it turns out Anis, the leader of the Shining Blade and like the foremost person of humanity to be protecting the queen, actually had this queen that was giving a speech wasn't the real queen at all. It was an illusion that she'd summoned to fool Scarlet, because obviously everyone knew something was going to happen because we'd already seen Scarlet say she was going to return. So Anis had played this trick on, I guess, not just Scarlet but the people too. I mean, no one knew that she'd done this, not even Logan, right? Certainly not Farron, who's just put himself in life's danger to save an illusion. The illusion disappears in this cutscene and Farron falls in. So it's not a quest to go off and save the queen as I was expecting. It's actually a quest to go off and save Farron. But he falls down, and then it's got a really cool animation. I did manage to catch footage of it, so hopefully you guys will see it on the video. But there's actually this really cool like blast door closing gate that comes over the entire hole and seals it off. So you have no way of getting inside where Scarlet is, who is right in Divinity's reach essentially, and you've got no way of getting to Farron either. At the same time, Scarlet announces that she's placed bombs all over the place, and she has taken control of the Watch Knights. I mean, I think we saw this coming. I mean, this was a really basic thing that she could do. So she takes control of the Watch Knights. They are no longer on our side. They don't even look like the Watch Knights anymore. They get transformed into these twisted mecha creations. There's a lot of different varieties of them with pretty interesting mechanics, but they start attacking everyone in Divinity's reach. So that's when the general mission type area begins for you as a player. You're going to be running around fighting the Watch Knights, killing them, and disarming these bombs. A matter in which, of course, you succeed. Scarlet does, however, like all of the citizens try and rally around Captain Logan and the Seraph, but Scarlet manages to bomb them. Logan gets out alive, but lots of people do die. So Scarlet is like always one step ahead of you, and I think Logan says that exact line. She's always been one step ahead, and she's had all of this planned out. What is interesting, though, during all this fighting is you can hear lots of little bits of dialogue being thrown about here and there from Graham and Rox and Anis and the Shining Blade and so forth, which is quite cool. It's very cinematic. Don't let me understate this. All of the missions and things that they added for this update, story stuff aside, they are really well polished and they are just genuinely fun to play, particularly with sound design. Like while you're playing in this section, they're doing really good with sound design lately. You can actually hear the crowds and you can hear the screaming of the people, and the new enemies have got all these really good sound effects and they feel good to actually hit. So it does all feel very fun to play. I mean, this section just doesn't have too much story. However, anyway, as I say, there's lots of bits of dialogue being thrown around, but also you can watch a small scene between two characters I haven't actually talked about on the channel yet. So, to understand what's going on here, let's rewind a bit. Let's go back to the secret at South Sun. So, not the original Karka event, but when we returned there. When we returned there, the Consortium were trying to turn it into a vacation paradise. One of the characters, Sub-Director Null, had created a small golem. At least I believe Sub-Director Null had created this golem. He may have just been working alongside it, but he'd created a golem named Job-Otron. And Job-Otron's purpose was to find new refugees, new people that had come to live on South Sun, and give them jobs. And mostly it would be, okay, you're here to go and kill monsters. Hey, you're here to do this horrible, horrible job, and you can't leave. We've already talked about what happens during this update. But Job-Otron was just basically another kind of funny character. Now, after what happened there with Kanek, Job-Otron was no longer needed because the refugees were free to leave. Nobody was coming, no one was looking for jobs. So Arenanet, and in the second half of the South Sun update, they renamed Job-Otron to Hobotron. And now it was this golem that I would assume if a golem ceases to have its purpose, it's either completely repurposed by its inventor or it's just destroyed. But this golem in particular doesn't have that happen. It becomes Hobotron. It has no job. It has no way to earn a living, as bizarre as this would seem for a golem. And it basically starts busking. Hobotron actually reappeared in this update. Before even Clockwork Chaos, it appeared when the pavilion arrived. And you can actually find him in the new district next to a human minstrel who is out on the streets trying to play an instrument to earn his living. And Hobotron basically goes to this human's busking corner and starts competing with him. So you see, whenever this minstrel plays a song, Hobotron starts playing it as well. And you can stand next to these characters and they've got all these stupid little quips where the minstrel's really annoyed that the robot's there and the robot is just saying, oh no, I just want to entertain. insane. Anyway, in this new mission, while all of the bombs are going off and stuff, you can actually find Hobotron and this minstrel, and they get kidnapped too. The Aether Blades teleport in out of nowhere. They look at them. There's a bit of a funny conversation where the minstrel says, "Oh, you've been making my life hell," and then the Aether Blades say, "Oh, hey, these guys can play music. Let's take them with us." And they all get teleported down with Scarlet and Farron into the pavilion, which is now sealed off. So you can see that little thing, and they'll come back at the end of the update too. So it's nice to see again that these small minor characters are popping up again. I really like that. That put a big smile on my face. Anyway, so you destroy all of these bombs. All of these people get annihilated. Logan survives, but ultimately you are successful, and all of the Watch Knights have been defeated. Everybody gathers near the entrance to the Queen's pavilion, including the Queen, including Anise, and including a character who we'd seen in the update already, but didn't have much of a role to play yet, named Emissary Vorp. This was a named Asura that didn't really have any dialogue in the previous update. Well, Emissary Vorp's there too, and now he plays a bigger role. Everybody puts their heads together to try and figure out how they can stop Scarlet. There is a small moment where Logan expresses dissatisfaction, shall we say, towards Anise for keeping the secret of the Queen illusion from him. He's saying, "Look, I want to defend the crown. You've got to keep me in here." But Anise has got a bit of a chip on her shoulder about Logan, because Logan gets far too personal whenever it comes to the Queen, and I completely agree with Anise there. Now, Vorp is a very cool character because he has a prior history or a prior knowledge of Scarlet. This is, out of the entire update, guys, this is where we learn the most about Scarlet, and the only interesting stuff really comes from. So, what does Emissary Vorp have to say about her? He says that she was given funding from an unknown benefactor to go and attend all 3 colleges of Ratasum. So Ratasum has got its 3 colleges. You, as the player character, if you are an Asura, you only get to go to 1 college. She's been to all 3, and apparently she excelled in all 3 of them. Everybody said that she was this great prodigy, that she had this unfounded understanding in all things engineering. And Vorp says as well, if you believe the stories, she's supposedly been trained by all the best races. She's been trained by the Asura, by the Char, by the Norn, and supposedly even Hylek. But if you believe the stories, this is. Supposedly, she has incredible amounts of training on all kinds of fields, and this may explain why she has got all of this technology at her disposal. Vorp also says that Scarlet herself claims to have mastered the eternal alchemy. Like, she has seen the eternal alchemy, and she understands it. Now, this is really cool. I very much like this idea. The eternal alchemy is an Asuran notion of the way the universe works. It's not necessarily religion, but it is the closest thing the Asura have to a belief system. And often you'll find the most insane geniuses, or the greatest goal for any Asura you may find, would be to understand and take control of the eternal alchemy. Vorp says that that's an impossible notion. Nobody can see or truly understand the eternal alchemy. Not even the greatest Asura understand it. There's no way Scarlet can. It's way beyond her. But Scarlet says she has seen and mastered the eternal alchemy. So this is something to consider. Vorp says that this is like being able to see the shape of the universe. It's just an absurd notion. But maybe it's something that eventually we'll come to believe about Scarlet. After all, why would Arenanet throw this in here? So Vorp says she's creating all of these portals to attack us. Why don't we examine them and then make a portal of our own to go and attack her? She's coming out of them, we'll go into them. So you agree to do this, and essentially now the game asks you to go and participate in a lot of the world events that are happening. These are massive Zerg fests. Basically, periodically, Scarlet is going to open a bazillion portals in one explorable zone of the game, and everybody flocks there because it's incredible loot. There's loads of champions to kill, and she will just keep attacking you with everything she can. You either succeed the event, in which case she's driven away, or you fail in the event, in which case she's driven away. It doesn't really matter. You just get less rewards. So they don't really seem to have too much consequence. Arenanet have said, though, that these are going to be a permanent part of the game in the future. So, yes, from that information, you can guess we do not fully defeat Scarlet in this update. Anyway, so these are happening a lot in-game right now. And yes, they are fun to an extent, but there's not too much story we can get from them. There is some interesting stuff, though. When she's creating these portals, it's not just Watch Knights, these twisted mecha creations that are coming out of the portals. Also, the Aether Blades are coming out, which pretty much confirms, especially considering it was Aether Blades that were working with her in the closing ceremony, pretty much confirms that the Aether Blades have some affiliation with Scarlet. And also, the Molten Alliance are coming out of these portals. Why? Well, Arenanet said to us before this update came out that this was going to be like the big conclusion. This was going to tie everything together that we'd seen in the living story so far. Well, is this it? Is this them tying everything together? Because it comes across to me, I've got to be honest, really sloppy. Like, there is no dialogue at all to say, oh, look, yes, I have been working with the Molten Alliance. Oh, did she form the Molten Alliance like we speculated? We just don't know. They're just randomly there. It's just, oh, there's Molten Alliance. Oh, look, they're here. They're coming through the portals. Please, Arena, don't do that. That just comes across so sloppy to me. It doesn't really make it feel like this epic conclusion that's tying everything together like they said it would. It just seems like they wanted an excuse to put the Molten Alliance in there somewhere to make that original stuff seem relevant. And I wouldn't suggest doing that. I think, you know, if it's not relevant, if you can't realistically make it relevant, if when it was originally made it wasn't meant to be relevant, don't try and shoehorn it in, because all that does is that cuts into my confidence that future story arcs in the Living Story will tie up in a nice sound way, rather than just, oh, hey, we've got these enemies, let's just throw them together. So yeah, I really don't like that. That is the Molten Alliance involvement here. The Aether Blade, I guess, make a bit more sense because there is more confirmation that they've been working together, but that's kind of what happens in the world events. There's no real dialogue. Scarlet just teleports around. You try to fight her, and whether you beat her or not, she's always just going to teleport away, laugh at you, and then arrive in a different zone later on. Anyway, you complete a bunch of these to create a portal to go into the pavilion. The pavilion is now named Scarlet's Funhouse. This is because it's her own twisted version of the pavilion, I suppose, though not too much has changed in there. Funhouse I find an interesting word because there is a place in Metrica Province named the Funhouse. Do you remember there's an Inquest base there? And Scarlet has quite heavy ties to the Asura and potentially the Inquest too. Don't forget the Aether Blades was said to have been funded by the Inquest. I really like that. I like that we have a Sylvari character that is so heavily invested in the Asuran way of life and the Asuran academia and the Asuran belief system. And I really enjoy that. So she's called it the Funhouse, and maybe there's a bit of a suggestion there that the people that funded Scarlet's development through these 3 colleges was perhaps the Inquest, and maybe she's got her fingers in the Inquest pies too. But we don't have any direct Inquest involvement here right now, just these hints that have been spattered about. So anyway, you go in, and essentially the whole story of entering her funhouse is you go in, you save Lord Farron, you save the Minstrel, you save Hobotron, and you fight Scarlet. After you fight Scarlet, she is defeated, and just like in the world event, she disappears. And it's left on a note of, ooh, where's she gone? When's she going to come back? That's pretty much it. Now, again, don't let me understate this. It's a really fun instance. The mechanics themselves are solid. It's really well polished. Again, with the sound design, I'm loving it. They've used some old Guild Wars 1 music in there, and I try my best not to sound like I've got too much of a hard-on for the first game, but it was just fitting music that they used there. And the way that they designed it, because they basically just changed the lighting, they just sort of put a filter over everything. When you finish the instance, they, on the fly, open up the blast door above you. If you look up quick enough, you'll see it opening again, and then they like create this illusion of the light flittering back in, and the lighting changes again, and it once again looks like the pavilion. It really feels like you've done some good, and once again you have access to this area as you may have had before the patch came out. So it's an enjoyable instance, but there's not too much story there. There's a lot more jokey little things which I do think have a place, and I don't want to undermine those. I do think it's pretty funny that they used Lord Farron's model. Lord Farron is naked when you find him. He's wearing his like speedos, his red speedo. That's it, because he was going to be cooked alive in a pot. And then he's just running around in just his underwear. And they have like this very suggestive dialogue where basically it suggests that she's like been raping him or something. It's pretty funny. It's pretty good. And of course, everything with Hobotron is funny as hell. So it is an interesting instance, but there's not too much story there. The most interesting thing I found is right at the end, Scarlet, it takes it as a real personal attack directly from you, the player character. Like, they go to quite some lengths to really address you, the player. Which is nice to see, I think, because we don't see that too much in the Living Story. And the main reason why we don't see that too much is because players can miss this content, and it's not permanent content. We've had this discussion before. So yes, Scarlet now seems to have been really personally affronted by us, and she's like, I will make you see how insignificant you really are, blah blah blah. And that's cool, but how's that going to work for players that miss this entire update? Is Scarlet going to start recognizing us in the future, and those players that miss the update are just going to be left in the dark and just going to have to suspend their disbelief? Or is it going to come out sort of sloppy still, like it already is? I mean, right now, it's already a bit of a mess, okay? When you say speak to Countess Anise, and it's like, oh, is she going to recognise me or not? Does she know that I'm a human that's done personal story stuff? Or is she going to recognise me despite the fact I'm a Norn that's never stepped foot in Divinity's Reach before today? It's already a bit of a mess, so and now they're doing it with this big key character, Scarlet. I'm curious how that will pan out. But I did like that they did that. Also, this line as well, she mentions, I will make you see how insignificant you really are. I like that line, because think back to what Emissary Vorp says. This is a woman that claims she can see and understand the eternal alchemy. Now, that is the idea of seeing all possibilities, everything in the universe, past, present, and future, just understanding of the vastness of the universe. And yeah, someone who was in that position would just look at every single event that happens in their life as an incredibly insignificant thing, and every person they meet as incredibly insignificant, and that's what she says here. I like that. A big part of who Scarlet is that she's unpredictable, and she seems to have an incredible disregard for the importance of anything. Like, to her, if she does have this massive understanding of everything, Divinity's Reach, this bastion of humanity's strength, may seem like an incredible thing to us, but to Scarlet, it's just a blip in the timeline of the universe, you know, and that's why she has this incredible, chaotic, unpredictable nature to her, which I like, and that ties in together. Scarlet, I think a lot of people might be sort of sad about who Scarlet ended up being. I am, in a way. I think Scarlet has got a lot of character, but she doesn't have any story to her. Her motivate, she's, again, I feel like, this is almost as an aside, but I do feel like she's another cop-out character. She's sort of like an Elder Dragon, right? In the Arenanet don't really have to create a compelling motivation for her. She just does it because she's like that. Do you know what I mean? So she's not, in that way, she's not a particularly interesting villain, but she does have a lot of character. So, I mean, if we're going to compare him to the Elder Dragons, she's got a hell of a lot more character than Elder Dragons do. So that's a step in the right direction, and I do quite like her character. Also, given the nature of her character, she's a villain, and I know people find this cliche, but she's a villain that could potentially side with us at some point. She seems to have this mysterious benefactor. She might not be at the top of the chain. She was paid to join the Ratasum colleges and presumably all of her other training. So perhaps, you know, we will keep climbing the chain. Yes, again, that's sort of cliche as well, but maybe when we do, we'll find out whoever was paying for all this stuff, or she's currently sided with, if anyone, maybe they'll betray her or something, and then we'll have her on our side. You know, I'm not saying that's a particularly new story, but I do think that that's at least one interesting option that they have with Scarlet as a character right now. Anyway, you defeat her, she vows that she will return at some point, and that's the end. Where does the living story go from now? She says something like, very shortly we will be nothing but tears. And then all of the forces of Divinity's Reach and Bram Rocks, we all sort of charge in and surround her, and she disappears away. The story does end again on Logan saying to Anise, you've got to keep me in the loop here, this is really annoying. So where does the living story go from now? Do we see Scarlet return? I think if she just returns and does something similar like this, I'm not going to be that impressed. I would like to see perhaps Arenanet now turn onto a different story, and then eventually Scarlet ties into it somehow. Sort of give us a clean slate where they know, now they know, like, they've got everything in place as a company on how they're going to be producing living story stuff. Maybe when they do like another living story arc now, they can make it a lot more solid, because as I say, like, this connection of the Molten Alliance and stuff, it doesn't feel solid to me. It just feels really sloppy how they've tied everything together. But maybe the next living story patch we will continue to see Scarlet, but they need to give us something more, because right now I feel like I've got everything out of that character I can get out of her. We need like another event to interfere with her or impact her in some way, rather than just her appearing and going, oh look, I'm all powerful, and then disappearing again. All of that stuff aside, they might also, with the living story, return to some other very vague hints that they've dropped us before. It might even be something more blatant about, you know, the Seraph and the Shining Blade. I know some people will probably want to get away from Divinity's Reach though. We haven't had too much on the Tarnished Coast. We haven't seen much to do with Zodja or Kaith lately, so perhaps the next living story stuff could have something to do with them. The next patch in particular looks like it's going to be to do with the Super Adventure Box, because there's a screenshot of like this cool looking bear guy in Super Adventure Box style on the main website right now, so we may have a small break. What I do think Arenanet need to do though is they need to start defining proper like story arcs. It needs to be like, okay, this was chapter 1 of the living story. It encompassed the first 8 8 living story updates we had for the game, it ended with Scarlet disappearing. This was chapter 2. This was a completely different story about returning to the Maguma jungle or something like that. There's an ice cream van outside my house right now. I think I'm pretty much done, guys. That's a recap of everything that's going on. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I'm curious where you think it might go. That's what I kind of view a lot of these videos should be more like. The discussion videos. I really like to hear what other people have seen. I haven't looked on the forums or anything about other small hints that people may have found. If I've missed anything big, you can bet your bottom dollar I will talk about them when Arenanet starts teasing in the next release. Oh, as an addendum too, I thought I should throw it in there. All those theories, man, that we came up with about, you know, the Thorman overreactor and potentially Scarlet and the Aether Blades coming from the future or whatever. I mean, that's still on the table, but clearly, if that's what Arenanet were going for, they were never gonna announce it as a part of this update. A small part of me kind of hopes that they've seen what the community, and it's not just me, it's the community, lots of people piece this kind of stuff together. I kind of hope that they see what the community found out and did, and then retroactively, in like 4 months or something, we'll see living story stuff that confirms those kinds of theories. But I mean, I think it's highly unlikely. Those theories are still on the table. At the end of the day, we are now just dealing with a Sylvari that has had loads of Asuran training, and all of this is very much tied into what the Inquest are doing, and is talking about the eternal alchemy and can clearly teleport around, and who knows, maybe that does involve going to the dimension we saw the steam creatures coming from. Steam creatures are the other things coming from these portals as a part of these invasions. They are still there. I think if we get any solid answers to this at all whatsoever, we'll see them in the Thorman overreactor fractal. Thorma came up as well in this update too. It was only a really vague reference, but Thorma came up and it made me think, Thorman overreactor is a bit of a push though. So yeah, I just don't think Arenanet are really going along that story thread. If they are, we'll see it in the fractal. We know that after we voted Ellen in, that's when they started to make the fractal. So if they do want to incorporate any of these theories, give any confirmation or weight to any of them, they can definitely do that when that fractal comes out. Sadly, this update didn't say a thing about it though. Was this the great battle of Divinity's Reach? A few bombs, you know, a kidnapped a queen illusion that disappeared, and then a district underground was just sealed off for a little while? I don't think so. It doesn't sound like a great battle of Divinity's Reach, though a lot of people did die. And of course, we didn't see Shod or anything like that. So yeah, I thought I'd throw that in there. Definitely wanted to mention that a little bit. And yeah, okay, so thanks very much for watching, guys. As I say, discussion video. Would love to hear what you guys think, and I will catch you next time. Have a great evening, everyone.